Welcome to a new series. It's driven by passion and fueled in part by righteous fury. More so than the other factions, the legions have very clearly defined identities, traits, and specializations that have been characterized across 40 plus books in the Horus Heresy series alone. And unfortunately, a good 2/3 of the legions are not served well by their current rule set in 8th edition. As you may know about me, I rate the importance of fluff greater than or at least equal to crunch. So allow that to frame the following. This is something GW ought to consider. If you throw fluff out the window, factions still need to have fun, unique, and valid mechanics available to them. If they fail to meet those criteria, those factions will always be passed on for others and left by the wayside. Look, in a perfect world, each legion would have their own codex, and there's always going to be a tier list. But I think that with a few rules, additions, and alterations, we can make all the legions viable and ensure that none of them are wholly written off because they have so little going on. So, with that out of the way, let's get into fixing these rules, starting with the White Scars. Here's what we are looking for: bikes, and rules that support leveraging speed to make tactical plays. Let's start with their chapter tactic, Lightning Assault. Whenever a White Scars unit with this tactic advances, it moves an extra 2 inches in addition to the distance rolled. In addition, those units can charge in a turn in which they fell back. This on its own doesn't do much for bikers. Bike squads do not carry a plethora of assault weapons, and attack bikes only carry heavy weapons, whereas all of these are rapid fire weapons. So the chapter tactic is going to allow your units to advance better than other Space Marines advance, and if you're bikers, you can do that or be able to shoot with the majority of the weapons your bikers are armed with. This is bad. The beta rule, Bolter Discipline, does benefit your bikers, but it only serves to make this chapter tactic worse, since you still can't shoot your bolters if you advance. Unique units. Corsaro Khan. He is similar to a standard captain, but with a unique weapon, which is essentially a D3 damage power sword, with strength ×2 if he's targeting characters. He has a unique rule to add 1 to the strength of friendly White Scars in a turn in which they charged. Thankfully, you can still put him on his bike as per his index entry, granting him an extra wound, toughness, and twin bolt guns. As far as characters go, he ain't bad. He can definitely fight characters, and the strength increase to friendly White Scars is a very meaningful buff to have should your bikers engage in combat against toughness 4 enemies. The unique stratagem for the White Scars is Born in the Saddle for 1 CP and is used when a unit advances. That unit can still shoot and charge this turn. Okay, so here's something, but it being a stratagem means that you can only use it on 1 unit per charge phase. This leads one to think about fielding a nice fat squad of bikers, since you want to maximize your faction's specialty. The exclusive Warlord trait for the White Scars is Deadly Hunter, which allows you to roll a dice each time your Warlord finishes a charge move within 1 inch of an enemy. On a 4+, that unit receives a mortal wound. This is largely forgettable, and we actually get better crunch by using some of the shared Warlord traits, which, in my opinion, also do a good job of representing the White Scars fluff anyways. And the exclusive relic for the White Scars is the Mantle of the Stormseer, which allows you to add 1 to psychic tests when attempting to manifest Smite. And while it's great to see support for the Stormseers in the form of a relic, it just happens to be underwhelming when compared to the shared relics available to all of the sub-factions. And here we are, a faction which specializes in using bikes and striking fast, but one that sacrifices the ability to strike if they want to be fast, with the exception of 1 unit if you spend 1 CP. As far as fixes go for the core of what would make the White Scars play like White Scars, I think it's pretty easy. There are 2 other fast factions, which also focus on speed, and they also happen to be considered competitive. Those are Kraken Tyranids and Evil Sons Orcs. Both of these work for their factions, but honestly I think we need to look at the Evil Sons, as their rules and the application of them on their units really ought to be the way the White Scars function. Let's start with a quick comparison. The Evil Sons clan culture offers a flat increase to their move characteristic, which means they can be faster than their contemporaries while not sacrificing their ability to shoot or charge. It should be quite obvious that this is better than Lightning Assault. On top of this, their captain equivalent offers an aura of advancing and charging within 6 inches. On top of that, orcs have a common rule to reroll all charges using any or all of the dice. Further still, orcs in general have more assault weaponry in their range, as is the type of their warbikers' mounted guns. It's the synergy between these rules is what allows these Evil Sunz bikers to play like they are capable of lightning assaults, since they can advance 19 to 20 inches on average and shoot their assault weapons at their standard efficiency and still charge into combat. With that in mind, here is the core of the fix. Lightning Assault needs to become more logical. Similar to Evil Sunz, we can add 1 to the move characteristic of all models with this chapter tactic, adding 2 instead if that model is a biker, and add 1 to advance and charge rolls made for them. In addition, models with this chapter tactic can still charge in a turn in which they fell back. This change means our bikers and more units in general can actually benefit from their subfaction rule without having to give up the use of their primary weapons. This series isn't about introducing new units, as that is far too complex of an ask when it comes to fixing factions. Instead, we're focusing on rules problems and potential adjustments. With that in mind, let's just hope that the inevitable Primarist bikers lend themselves to some good White Scars synergy. I think there is also grounds for the White Scars to have a stratagem to grant a biker unit the ability to fall back and shoot. This tool is so desperately desired by bikers, which, as we have already established, shoot better than they fight. For instance, I have a friend who wanted to play an army of Space Marine bikers. Bikes everywhere, and he came to the realization that he's better off playing his bike army as Ultramarines for this exact reason. And lastly, I think it'd be quite worthwhile to have a Fire and Fade type stratagem, as it would be quite logical for bikers to use this type of hit and run tactic, especially when those bikers do not have an invuln save built into their rules. Warlord traits. As I mentioned earlier, this would be a great place to have an Alpha Hunter style Warlord trait that would allow friendly units to advance and charge when they are 6 inches within your Warlord. And while this begins to tread on the same ground as the Born in the Saddle stratagem, I think it's a better implementation of those same mechanics. Sure, we're enabling multiple units to advance and charge, but we are also forcing our Warlord to be in a more aggressive position, and in turn, a more vulnerable one. Also keep in mind that White Scars bikes are far less resilient when compared to the Dark Angel's Ravenwing or the Custodes jet bikes, both of which have a 4-up invulnerable save. It makes sense for a faction like the Dark Angel's Ravenwing to obtain the advance and charge mechanic through a stratagem on a single unit, since their units are not only more deadly than your standard bikers, but they also become more resilient from advancing. But seeing as the White Scars do not have a similar ability, they desperately need to make their impact on the battle as quickly as possible. Relics. While doing my research for potential relics for the faction which uses bikers, there was one thing I was desperately hoping to find. A jet bike, which I sort of found. I present Wrath of the Heavens. Based on my understanding, the Wrath of the Heavens is a ground-based bike, but it is tooled for speed beyond anything else like it. It's stated that it puts land speeders to shame, but its most notable quality is that it's fitted with a short burn grav impeller. Here's what I'm thinking. The model taking the relic bike would increase their move characteristic by 2. In addition, once per turn, you can give that model the fly keyword. This effect lasts for the remainder of the phase. While this is not only cool, it also opens up for some interesting plays. For instance, need to navigate some difficult terrain to contest an objective? Activate the grav impeller and fly over it onto your objective. Need to take out an enemy flyer that has drifted too close? Turn on the grav impeller in the charge phase and charge into that enemy flyer. Being targeted by a weapon which has a +1 to hit non-flying units? You get the idea. So let's review these fixes. The chapter tactic has been adjusted so that White Scars units can move better by 1 inch and bikers move better by 2 inches, all without having to advance, ensuring you can use your chapter tactic without sacrificing a unit's activation in the subsequent shooting or charge phases. Adding 1 to advance rules helps non-bikers, and adding 1 to charge also helps when you need it. And falling back and charging remains unchanged. A Warlord trait to advance and charge nearby units will allow the less resilient biker squads to make their impact. A stratagem to fall back and shoot, and Fire and Fade, which greatly synergize with the ethos of being on a bike. And a relic to provide the Legion known for fielding bikes a relic bike, which to the best of my understanding is lore supported. And I think with just those fixes, we really get a much more viable form of the White Scars faction. But tell me, what do you guys think? And what would you guys like to see? And that wraps up this video. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Also, what do you think of this as a series? Do you want to see more of this kind of content? If so, feel free to leave a comment below, and let me know what other factions you'd like to see. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.